There comes a moment in each of our lives where we must cross the threshold, a moment that forces us to transition from idyllic fantasy to harsh reality. That moment can occur anytime from infancy to adulthood, depending on one's circumstances, but we're all forced to awaken to the cruel nature of the world at some point. How we react to this rude awakening can define the path we choose to walk for the entirety of our lives. This moment passes for everyone in the world of Berserk in a more literal sense, with people's naive worldviews being shattered by the horrors of monsters and demons. And in this new series, I'll be delving into the ways different characters in Berserk react to crossing the threshold. Farnese grew up knowing only the cold darkness of solitude, devoid of any familial love or friendly affection. All she had was the cold, dark expanses of the castle in which she lived. She knew pain, and she knew the world was full of suffering, as just outside the castle in which she resided, heretics were routinely burned at the stake. As if drawn to the warm light that pierced her world of darkness, she left the castle to watch, and was handed a torch by an onlooker. Fearfully, she threw it into the fire and watched the shadows dance. This became the catalyst for her idyllic fantasy, a fantasy of control. If she could follow the doctrines of religion and be in the right, even if she spread darkness and despair, she could escape her all-encompassing fear. She could control the darkness that filled her with dread. So she did just that, making the flames dance with the torches she'd throw and praying to the god of the holy sea for reassurance of her power and significance. But this never erased her fear, it only suppressed it, and as she continued to live her rigid and fearful life, she came across the man that would shatter her illusions, the man that would force her to cross the threshold. The Black Swordsman. As Guts carried her away from the Holy Chain Knights' camp to question her, she experienced darkness incarnate and was forced to face her frailty and insignificance, nearly being killed by demonic dogs, assaulted by a horrific horse, and possessed by a spiteful spirit. She saw beauty in Guts' battle for survival, but wasn't ready to let go of her own illusions. She'd seen things deemed impossible by the doctrines she'd followed, so she tried to forget. Tried to retreat back into her idyllic fantasy, into a place of control. Then, she met Mosgus, a man that showed her both endless comfort with his words and inhuman horrors with his actions. She saw the torture he doled out, the despair he spread, just as she had, but his words that it was the will of God comforted her. Just as she'd found solace in the doctrines that claimed she was in the right, she found comfort in Mosgus's platitudes of divine justice. But again, she was forced to face the darkness of reality during the incarnation ceremony. As the world around her erupted into horror, once again, she saw the beauty of Guts' resilience within a darkness she'd refused to accept. His matter-of-fact way of continuing forward gave her a sense of comfort that religion never had, for he was surviving in the face of what she'd been using doctrines to cower from. And so, she decided to follow him, to try and learn how to survive in the darkness without the comforting lies she'd relied so heavily on her whole life. The beginnings of Farnese's time traveling in Guts' party were filled with self-loathing and despair. Time and time again, she was forced to confront just how truly powerless she was. She had little to offer the group, and often ended up being a burden, blinded by her own fear. She knew this was the position she was in, and then accepting her powerlessness, she opened herself up to growing past her old crystallized beliefs. The breaking of her ego was the first step in overcoming her fear. But it wasn't until she was forced to protect someone weaker than herself that she truly began to grow. In trying to keep Casca safe, she was able to stay on her feet where before she would have kneeled. Feeling Casca's warmth on her back reminded Farnese that she needed to be strong, that she needed to overcome her fear and uselessness. She didn't conquer her fear in this moment, but she took her first step in overcoming it, struggling forward with every ounce of strength and bravery she could muster. With a newfound purpose to protect, along with the inspiring words of Shiarki, Farnese asked the young witch to instruct her in the ways of magic. By breaking down her preconceived notions of the world and renouncing the doctrines she'd clung to, she became able to look at the world in a new light, not through the rigid lens of religion, but through eyes of curiosity and an open mind, with a desire to learn and accept new things that she would have called blasphemy in her past. But recognizing her powerlessness was only the first step in her evolution, and it came with its own drawbacks. She became so aware of what she lacked that she lost sight of what she possessed, and as she spent more time watching over Casca and becoming proficient in her role as protector, she failed to realize just how integral to the party she'd become. Casca had bonded with her, and she was the only one that could truly take care of the woman that gave the group's journey meaning. But when the group found themselves unable to find a boat to continue their journey, Farnese wanted to make herself useful, so she returned to her dark, cold, solitary beginnings in order to give the group safe passage to Elfhelm. But the threshold had been crossed. She couldn't go back. She wasn't the same scared little girl she'd once been, and she proved it when the banquet hall was attacked by monsters controlled by the Kushan. She fearlessly plunged into battle, protecting the powerless, whereas before she would have cowered in fear, hoping someone else would protect her. As she left with the group towards Elfhelm, she continued her magical education with Shiarki. Her studies in becoming a mage mirrored her personal journey. When she first created her luminous body, she began by letting the darkness in, accepting it, surrounding herself in it. Then, she built herself back up, piece by piece, limb by limb, and was able to fly through the sky with her teacher. Later, when she used her first spell, she explored the astral world with open eyes and saw it for what it was, not what she believed it would be, and she experienced just how truly insignificant she was. But instead of being crushed by her insignificance, she found solace in the fact that she could do what she could, that she could protect others, no matter how small she might have been. She fully came into her role as protector, not only protecting everyone on the ship with her spell, but jumping in front of Casca, Shiarki, and the Moonlit Boy without hesitation to keep them safe. And later, she was even able to heal Guts with her magic, the one that had been the catalyst for her growth. She accepted that she had an important role, that she was useful, but it was different than before where she'd thought she had control over the world around her. Now, she saw herself as the small piece of the collective that could only do what was within her control, heal and protect. Farnese had gone from an ignorant, terrified girl that hid behind the pain she brought others to feeling control of her own fear, to an enlightened, brave woman that did everything she could to protect those around her that weren't in control of their own situations. She crossed the threshold, faced her insignificance head-on, and built herself back up, becoming someone that could affect the world around her for the better. To think that we're in control is folly. To think that we're above anyone else is foolishness. True strength lies in understanding just how small we are, and learning what it is we can do to make the world a better place. This has been Evan. Thank you for watching.
Huge shout out to Kath at xcatharsis with a Y on Twitter for coloring the Farnese panel that I used both for the background and the thumbnail. So you should follow them on Twitter for a bunch of cool manga colorings plus general anime content. Yeah, and manga content, yeah. Also, I have a Patreon, so I would be honored if you became a patron. Either things that you get, you look at the thing, I'm pretty, I did a thing. Yeah, have a good day. Okay, bye.